in Australia, we're too harsh on failure. But it depends. I think it depends on there's different types of failure. There's failure where you give it a crack and things you just have bad luck, and there's failure where you're just stupid or criminal or fraudulent. So, and there's two different types of failures there. I'm going to distinguish between the two. I think broadly speaking, if I look at someone, if I've got two resumes, I'm hiring a senior person. If someone started their own business and given it a good crack and whatever, it hasn't worked, that's incredible. If I see that, I'm always wanting to find someone who's done that versus someone who's worked at a bank their whole life. To me, that's uninteresting. I want to see someone who's got high risk tolerance, who's willing to create. Obviously, if they've run 5 businesses, they've all collapsed in a week. That's not great. But if you've done 2 or 3 businesses and they've lasted a couple of years and for whatever reason they haven't survived, that to me is a perfect person to hire. I've loved it. It's hard to hire them because they're usually starting the next business. But I think US has a similar attitude. Failure is tolerated. And really, if you had a business, you've learned a lot of stuff. So I think the reason why US tolerates failure is they know that having a business doesn't mean you're guaranteed to success the next one, but you've learned a lot.
All right, Adam, thanks for joining. Really appreciate you coming on.
Pleasure, Barry. Great to be on.
So I think the most important question that I have, first and foremost, is according to your social, you're a Barefoot Marathon runner. So what is that all about? Because I'm really interested to hear about that story a little bit.
Actually, I heard a podcast last week, How I Built This Podcast, which is, I think, everybody's second favorite pod after yours, obviously. They had a guest on who founded Zero Shoes and talked about that barefoot running story. My wife actually started barefoot running like a week before me, probably about 2011, after we both read Born to Run, an incredible book on running in Mexico. So I read that. I've been having some shin splints, ITB, so random little sort of running injuries that everybody gets, and started just trying not wearing shoes and haven't had an injury since, 12 years later. So it's unusual, but it's been really, really good for me anyway.
How many marathons have you done?
Just 2 full marathons and probably a dozen, maybe more halves, maybe 15 or 16 halves.
Born to Run is an amazing book, and I think they have Born to Run 2 now, which was recently released. They do. That's right.
Thanks, Al. Definitely.
No, yeah.
I've read it a few times. I love it.
They have, I think Rich Roll interviewed them on his podcast, and they were talking about some really cool stuff, barefoot running, plus some more stuff. But good to hear that, exercise is definitely a really cool part of your life, especially when you're doing super busy stuff. Let's talk about some of the early days. I think you have a really interesting story. You have an interesting background, obviously. The context of the conversation I want to steer towards is really, obviously, luxury escapes is one thing, but also getting there. I think the journey towards there is really important. And I think a lot of the audience members will resonate with a lot of your story, ups and downs, but also the tenacity to actually go out there and do something for yourself. So do you want to give just a quick lay of the land of your background, of how you got into not just the business building side of things, but just entrepreneurship in general? And maybe we can go from there and sort of work our way through your story as we sort of get into what you're doing now.
Yeah, for sure. So our story, I started the business with my best mate from school, a guy called Jeremy, who's still equal partner in almost everything we do. Certainly equal partner in luxury escapes. We chat multiple times per day. So even though he lives in London now, but we're still very connected. So we started our very first business we did together was just after we finished school. We sold our assignments, essentially. So you get to do this thing called cats in Victoria. I don't do anymore, but these sort of big assignments, we put ours on, and we bought some smart people's cats and put them on a CD-ROM and sold them at a BCE fair back in 1998. That was our very first business together. And then we both got, I did law, Jez did finance honours. He went to work for a bank. I worked for a big law firm in Melbourne, a global firm now. And I had a great time there. But Jez was always wanting to do something for himself. This is well before being an entrepreneur was cool. This is back in 2004. So entrepreneurs weren't cool at all. It was really kind of weird to do your own thing. Everybody wanted to be a banker or a consultant or a lawyer or whatnot. Now it's very different. Now there's a well-trodden path to being a founder, and it's actually considered probably better. But back then it wasn't that way at all. It's hard to think back to 19, 18 years ago. The paradigm was very different. But Jez is always very good at thinking differently, and he understood the benefits from a tax perspective, from a wealth growing perspective of having your own business. So it's very much a contrarian thinker, which is really sort of been a benchmark we've been able to sort of do over the last 20 years. But Jez was pushing me to do a business. We didn't really know what we wanted to do, and we had, like, I was a lawyer, so we had no real experience at it. We'd work jobs like at cinemas and supermarkets and nightclubs and all that kind of stuff. We never had that one proper job. But anyway, we just wanted, Jez in particular wanted to do something, and I was happy to sort of play along. So we're looking for an idea, but there was nothing that was pressing. As it happened, a few months earlier, actually, I've been skiing in a place called Whistler in Canada, and Whistler's it's really hard to get accommodation there. So one year, I've been there 3 years. The first year I literally slept on the floor. The second year, I slept in a loft, which was about that high, with another guy, with 8 people in a 2-bedroom place. And the third year, I actually rented a 1-bedroom and then effectively sublet it. I lived there and I had 7 other people in there, so I didn't have to pay much because we had so many people in there. So that was sort of a bit of background. And as it happened, we noticed there was businesses operating in St Kilda, in a suburb of Melbourne, that effectively rented apartments to hire or to backpackers. And backpackers who are in Melbourne or in any city for more than a couple of weeks it's a fall between 2 chairs. So you don't want to stay in a hostel for 3 months. It's expensive and it's frankly no good. You can't afford a hotel, obviously, nor would you want to, and you can't really get your own lease because the leases are generally a year minimum, and people weren't staying for a year. So there was this market that just wasn't being addressed, and we noticed that, and we thought we can probably do that. I had that I had that apartment in Canada that I sublet. So I sort of had an idea that you could sublet and kind of cover some costs. I thought, why don't we try this? So I went around and bought some second-hand furniture. Jez was somewhere overseas at the time. Literally went around my dad's trailer and got the trading post and paid $2,000 to buy a bunch of second-hand furniture and furnish one apartment. And very well, we'd never, other than when we lived overseas, we were still living at home in Melbourne. So it was our first time we rented a property. So to go through that, sort of learn how to rent a property and furnish it and get all that stuff done. And we did that. It's not hard. It was just to learn it. The real challenge for us in that business from the start was how do you get tenants? Because that's like any business, the supply is generally the easy part. Not always, but usually the easy part, and demand's the hard part. And this was no exception. Anybody can furnish and rent an apartment, pretty much anyone. The challenge is getting people to pay a margin and creating the value for customers. So, we went round to internet cafes. Internet cafes back then were a thing. So we went round to internet cafes and put this sort of poster, which had a phone number down the bottom so people could call me. And we did, and we went round to internet cafes every day for a couple of weeks or a month, had an open house, and we're able to rent out our first apartment to a bunch of guys from England. We realised that renting to a bunch of guys in hindsight wasn't the best idea, but they were good guys, and we learned our lesson eventually. But rented the apartment, and we basically just made a margin. And that very first apartment was making us like $20,000 a year, which for minimal work, once you set it up, it's kind of in. So we thought there's a kernel of a business there. And then we did a second apartment, a second, call it beta test, as we call it these days. I was still at Free Hills. Jez was, I think, had resigned from ANZ then, but I was still working, did that second one, and that went well. Although what we didn't realise is we were effectively renting them going into summer, which is the absolute peak time for backpack. Everybody comes to Melbourne and Sydney in November, December. What we didn't realise is come sort of May, June, things change a lot, and you have to scrounge around trying to feel drop pricing and all that kind of stuff. So I learned the first lesson, dynamic pricing. But back then, we obviously didn't realise this. So we did our first 2 apartments, going gangbusters. And then in April, I took leave of absence, which was essentially like a sabbatical from my law firm. Basically said to them, I want to give this a try. Everybody looked at me like I was crazy. Thought I'd give it a try. And if it didn't work, I'll go back in 6 months. Anyway, we started rolling out apartments, effectively cash flowing ourselves. So we had 50 or 60 grand saved, which we used to cash flow the first sort of half dozen. And then we used the profits from those apartments to cash flow the next one. So we borrowed about 50 grand from our parents, but generally it was all self-funded. And that's sort of been our story. We were bootstrapped in all our businesses until very recently. So we've always used profits to reinvested profits, paid ourselves very little or nothing, never really used debt, never really had external equity, and just sort of funded from profits sort of the whole way through. But that was our first business. Took a leave of absence, just started rolling it out, got to sort of 50 apartments, and we were away.
Was the that whole, obviously you went to Whistler, you were doing something that you wouldn't have thought you would be doing in terms of starting a business, that inspiration for starting that backpacking business. What was the impetus for you to actually do something? Because it's one thing having the idea, because everyone has ideas, but why did you decide to sort of go out there and actually execute on it and taking the action? Obviously, you mentioned your buddy Jez who helped you get over the hump, but was there something within you yourself that you were thinking, if I don't do this now, I'll regret it? Was there any sort of self-projection into the future about what your life could look like that made you get over the hump? What were some of those factors?
It's a great question. Definitely a lot was Jez pushing, and Jez is great at that, and he'll get an idea and he'll push it. Not always, his ideas absolutely aren't always right, but no one has 100% right. But when he gets the thematic right, he's generally is pretty good strategically, very good strategically. And he was certainly great at pushing. And this is obviously, the concept wasn't around, but it's a classic two-way door, using the famous Jeff Bezos line. If this didn't work, that's why we took a leave of absence. If it didn't work, I just go back. There was almost zero risk. As you know, the best time to start a business is when you don't have these commitments. If I'm starting a business now with a wife and two lovely kids and a house and a mortgage, it's much harder. When I'm 24, I was living at home, almost zero expenses. But we were cognizant that this was the best time to start it, even though it wasn't in fashion to start a business. Neither of us idiots. Jez was probably better at pushing me, but I was not stupid enough to know that this was a great time to do it. And it was a two-way door before we knew what two-way door. It was a classic two-way door. We could have easily gone back. And the way we started as well, we started it while I was still working at Office. We started 2 pilot apartments in our time. So it was a classic side hustle before side hustles were invented. And I don't necessarily believe in side hustles, and I think sort of look at my 2 rules of starting businesses is don't force an idea. Don't do an idea because you want to start a business, because starting a business is cool. Back then, that concept didn't exist. We founded that business because we saw a real need. We had friends who were from the UK staying in a terrible apartment. We thought there's a real demand, a real need for this, and you saw this in everyday life. We didn't come up, sit one day in a bedroom writing ideas for businesses. We saw an idea that we saw a problem that needed solving. And secondly, when you see a problem, throw everything into it, put real skin in the game. And when I took leave of absence, I wasn't getting paid much. I was getting paid maybe $60,000 a year at the law firm. But back then it was a bit, and that was real. The real skin was my time, and reputation. So both Jez and I stopped our lives in other respects and put 100% into this business. Jez's dad had an accounting firm, little accounting firm. We had this tiny little office. We set up an office, and we took it seriously. This was our first shot. If it didn't work, we could go back. It was again two-way door, but we didn't. We didn't keep it a side hustle for long. We made it a full hustle, and that was without doing that, we never would have done what we did. And we kept pivoting through the years. We'll talk about the rest of the story, but we kept pivoting because Jez kept pushing, let's do this, let's do that. We could see. And the beauty of a great founder relationship has complementary skills. And Jez was always the sort of pusher and the strategy guy, and I was always the operator who could look around corners and make sure things weren't going wrong. You kind of need those complementary skills, whether it's tech and sales or whatever it is. We had that, and we have had and still have those complementary skills that we know we're not going to get everything right. But you need to get the directional stuff right. And founding a business is an asymmetric bet. Things pay off 10,000 to 1. You've got to take that bet. If you're not going to take that bet, then don't start a business, work for a corporate, whatever, be a consultant, work at a furniture store, it doesn't matter. But if you're willing to make asymmetric bets, knowing that some of those bets don't work, then start a business. But you've got to understand that some of the bets don't work.
Yeah, no, I agree. The notion of like starting that business, the asymmetric misalignment as well, is definitely a great impetus. But also, once you do it, you hopefully get enough momentum and a bit of a flywheel effect that you can start to reap the rewards, but then have that nice feedback loop going, and then you can start to really hone in and continue to build out the business. Did you feel when you were doing this and building this out, not just with the luxury, but with the backpacking business and all the other pursuits in between, whereas this ever notion that, look, this is just so much work that I just can't do this anymore, because building a business is tough, right? And yes, there is that definitely upside of down the road, there may be a massive payoff or something, rewarding will come, but it's the delayed gratification. So was there ever a moment where you felt like, well, maybe I just would have been better going back to my corporate job and being a lawyer because this is just too tough for me? Or was it like, well, I need to continue doing this because this is exciting and this is fun?
I definitely never thought of going back to being a lawyer. Being a lawyer, is far more work. I was doing all-nighters. I was doing hundreds of hours, 100 hours a week for relatively little money, and then the work is horrific. So I certainly never thought of going back to that. It was running a business is much more fun as well, and especially coming from, it's all relative. I worked at a cinema, which I did when I was 19. That's a lot of fun. So I was coming from a non-fun job. So that was never an issue for us. And we had each other, and we go play footy with Macquarie guys on a Wednesday. So we still had, I still had lots of friends who worked in the city. So we still had a lot of the benefits of working in a big firm whilst not working in a firm in a way. But yeah, so we never, if I think back to the early days of the business, the very early days was we used to go and kick a footy at 4:00 in the afternoon because we didn't have enough to do. So in the early days of business wasn't that. Then probably the hardest, we looked at the sort of luxurious, the beginning of pre-luxurious scale. So we had a few online businesses. We had a business called deals.com, Zoopon before that was our first online business. Those early days were certainly tougher. I did 9 years without a day off, essentially. I'd be doing customer support on 4 or 5 hours every weekend, each day. I did sort of every job in the business. And those early 2, 3, 4 years were tough, but no tougher than working as a lawyer. And I was sort of used to it. And my wife was with us in the business, and she was working, so we'd be on holiday in Hong Kong or whatever, and we'd be in the club lounge and both pounding away till 8 o'clock at night because this is what we did. You don't think anything different of it. And it's your money, it's your business, so you sort of do what you need to do. I don't think there are too many founders who haven't had a couple of tough years. Maybe you get lucky, you raise money, whatever, you can hire a great team. But certainly bootstrap founder, because we were bootstrap, we never raised money. You're trying to save money at every turn, which invariably involves not hiring super good people initially, or certainly not hiring super expensive people initially, and trying to do everything yourself. So, yeah, it was a long. Even now, there aren't many days I don't work. Now, if I'm on holiday, laptop's always with me, my phone's always with me. I'm answering messages 18 hours a day, so it's 17 hours a day. So I'm always on. But to me, I find, I'm sure a lot of people you speak to, I find work itself cathartic and relaxing. I don't have an issue doing work. I think you need to love the detail, love the work. And I'm lucky enough that I do. It doesn't matter if I'm sweeping up leaves in the garden or answering customer service emails or whatever. I kind of like getting the job done well. So I don't find it bad. It is sort of a challenge in the early days.
Yeah. That's something it's very nuanced, but it's very important. And I think having the ability to do something that you love or that you find exciting isn't work at that point. It's just part of your lifestyle. And that's really the tipping point for a lot of people when they realize like this is no longer a 9-to-5 gig anymore. It was never supposed to be a 9-to-5 gig. This is a lifestyle that I've incorporated into my life. And whatever will come my way, I don't mind doing it because that's what I signed up for. But also, you're building the business at the same time. So I think there's definitely a testament to doing something for yourself because it's exciting, it's fun, and then you have the chance of doing something great, but also enjoying it and not feel like you're slugging it out at the office or at the cubicle because you're working for someone else. And I feel like that's sort of the mentality that a lot of people sort of need to get in. But it's also very tough because there's taking those risks are also very hard at the same time, and making sure that you de-risk yourself as well. And you mentioned a few de-risk activities you can do there as well. I definitely want to get back into that down the road and segue into sort of advice for young people towards the end. But let's sort of continue the conversation towards luxury escapes. After the backpacking thing, what happened then? You did that well. Did you sell that off? Did you sort of unwind that? What was the story after the backpacking?
Yeah, we just kept on running it. As part of it, we actually morphed the backpacking stuff to a corporate business. So the backpacking stuff rolled off. There's a bit of regulatory sort of risk around that backpacking business. So sort of 2007, 8, 9, we started building up our corporate apartments business. So classic 3 months, someone working in IT, needing an apartment, that rent an apartment, we do it for them. We actually still have one apartment left. It got to sort of 50 or 60. We end up, but as part of that, we bought half a dozen properties because the rental market in Melbourne was getting tight. We bought half a dozen properties. We used 95% leverage, and that was when the GFC was happening. We just were uncomfortable having debt. It was the only time we really had debt secured against properties. We ended up selling the properties for $1 million windfall profit because the properties went up, we painted them, we put the new carpet, whatever. So we had that $1 million windfall profit, which is more money than we'd ever made. We were at 28 at the time, so more money than we ever made in the actual business. Was making a couple $100,000 a year. So it was okay, but it wasn't life-changing. And neither was the $1 million, but the $1 million was a really nice filler. And it effectively gave us our own sort of seed fund in a way. So we knew the corporate apartments business wasn't scalable, really. You could scale it nationally, but it'd be tough. Even scaling it domestically is hard because every time we set up an apartment, we're putting together the furniture, making the beds. It was hard work. So we wanted a scalable online business. We could see online was really taking off at that time. So it kind of made sense. We were young. We sort of understood it. We saw our original idea we had was a business, effectively a business like Dimmy or book a restaurant where you book restaurants online, essentially. Mm-hmm. Our idea had a discount element to it. We started doing that in 2009, 10. Then we saw the whole Groupon craze happen, and always Groupon knockoffs. Groupon was the first business, the quickest business hit $1 billion turnover. I think it was at one point it was valued at $26 billion US, or some insane value. It's now worth $200 million or something. So it's basically gone to zero. But at that point in 2010, it was huge. We saw Groupon, thought, well, this actually is a pretty good idea. We'll pivot to that. Started doing that, and then we clearly weren't the only ones in Australia to see that. So the Catch of the Day boys, who became shareholders in us later, saw that. The guys from Jump On It saw it. Our later partners, Josh and Anton, who created UFA, saw it. Spreets guys saw it, who we bought a business from and know very well. So there's a whole community of ex-group buying people, but everybody saw this craze. Everybody jumped in. It looked amazing for the first 6 months to a year. This incredible viral growth. Everybody was talking about group buying. We realised, we were probably the first to realise because we were closest to it, that there were some real problems with that business. One problem was unit economics just didn't work. In that you'd pay $50, $60 to acquire a customer who'd spend $50, you get $20 margin, but they may not buy again because they had a bad experience because you didn't control the end-to-end customer experience, because we relied on restaurants, massage places, whatever, to fulfill the experience. So sometimes they were great, sometimes they were terrible. That was a problem with that. The other problem was unit economics and customer satisfaction. So those were the two major issues. We realised, though, that as part of that business, we started doing a bit of dabbling in travel, and we knew nothing about travel, never worked in the travel business, never travelled 5-star. They'd done some trips or whatever to Thailand and stuff, but didn't really have a clue what we were doing in terms of travel. But people came to us, and we saw other businesses starting to do some travel stuff. We thought, actually, the problems we have with local small basket size customer satisfaction don't exist with travel, because A, travel basket size is closer to $2,000, so you've got some really good unit economics, and B, hotels really care about the hospitality customer experience. There's A, they're in the hospitality business, and B, there's something called TripAdvisor and other review sites. And if hotels do a bad job, they get smashed, and people don't go to them again. So hotels really care about the end-to-end experience, much more so than a mum and pa restaurant who sort of cares but sort of doesn't care and doesn't have sophistication to really know how to serve a customer. So those couple of reasons made travel, in the end, a much better sustainable business. We still have the experiences business. It's really part of the travel business now, and it goes really well together. But as a rule, travel business looked like the best business, and we just grew that business gradually over time. So probably should have invested more quickly in it. We had another sort of later stage co-founder, a guy called Mark, and Josh as well, who we bought his business over, who were really instrumental in helping us with the travel business. A lot of our great early stage employees are great in the travel business. So there's a really a core team of 10 of us who really driving that business forward. And we just had a great run, had a lot of luck. We discovered newspaper ads were a great source of getting customers at a negative CPA essentially. And we just started learning the business. We had no idea about how the big travel business worked. Still, we were real outsiders. And ultimately that was probably our biggest benefit, in that we were competing against a lot of legacy travel businesses that hadn't changed that model for 30, 40 years, these wholesale models that don't really work. And then obviously they have online travel agents like OTAs like Booking.com and Expedia, and these guys weren't evolving either. So it left this really interesting market that we could continue to learn, evolve, and grow our business, whereas everybody else was kind of just on their heels.
What's an OTA?
Online travel agent. So Booking.com is the biggest. Expedia is the second biggest. Ctrip's the third biggest. Essentially, the big marketplaces of travel. So if you want to go anywhere, Booking.com probably has it, and you can reserve it for no money down. You give them a credit card and you rock up there and pay. So they're essentially a distribution channel for hotels.
So what was is that the stuff you just mentioned, was that the precursor to what Luxury Escapes is today, and learning sort of the craft of the travel industry, learning about how that operated, working with the OTAs, right? Obviously, there was a lot of lessons learned through that period. And as you started to sort of scale the business and you started to see, well, maybe the unit economics can work, did you feel like this was something that could be much bigger? Because no one knew maybe at that time that something like COVID would hit at that point. And so when notwithstanding COVID, but also just focusing on the travel industry itself, did you notice that there was going to be this really massive interest for luxury travel? Because obviously people are trying to sort of get out and go to these places, but also be able to afford a lot of these services and experiences at a reasonable price. What was the demand like, rather than just being a regular standard travel company, having that luxury level on top of it and that brand? Did that really add a positive sort of spin to what you were building?
You give us too much credit for having a plan. So we just followed the customer demand and followed the money. So we had this group buying business. We saw that travel was working well and that luxury travel was working well. And we started doing effectively flash sales for travel. So our business is really based on incremental spend. So the difference between us and we're talking about OTA. So OTAs largely distribute existing demand. So you want to go to the Hilton in Zurich, you go to Booking.com and you'll book the Hilton in Zurich. You're going there anyway, and Booking just help facilitate that transaction, which is fine. What we do is very different. So 97% of our customers weren't planning on going to the hotel they went to till they came to Luxury Escape. So we inspire new travel and we change customer behaviour. 70% of our customers weren't even planning to go to the country. They booked till we told them about it. So we are quite different to an OTA. We have a part of our business that is a bit more similar, but our initial business, our flash sales business is quite different, in that we'll work with a limited number of properties at one time, so 40 or 50 properties at one time, and usually only a couple per region max, sometimes just one per region. So we've got the Hard Rock Hotel in London. It's the only property we have in London on flash at the moment. We tend to do sort of one at a time. Maybe Bali might have two or three, but we have limited inventory. And the beauty of that is customers who want to go somewhere, often our customers just want a beach holiday. They don't necessarily have to go to the Grand Hyatt Nusa Dua, but if they see it there and they this looks like a great hotel, I'll go there. But if they see a great place in Thailand or Vietnam or Maldives, they're just as likely to change their buying intent to something else, because we make our hotels look amazing and showcase them, provide lots of information. Also, we provide far better pricing. So when you look about OTAs, pretty much every channel globally in travel is basically the same price. Occasionally you get some rogues out there, but usually what you play on Booking.com is the same as Expedia, it's the same as Flight Centre, it's the same as everywhere, and the same as the hotel itself. What we do in our flash deals, because they're only available for 2 weeks behind a wall, so to speak, it's free to join, but you've got to sign up to see it. Because they're protected and they're only 2-week specials, and there's a degree of exclusiveness about them. What happens there is people change their behaviour, so we get these great packages. So we won't put a deal up unless it's 30% off, and often it's 40% better pricing than what Booking.com and Expedia are. So our customers get incredible value, which is obviously great. And our hotels get incremental revenue, which is fantastic for them. So we create a win-win-win for the hotel, for the customer, and we just sit in the middle there. So that's a really lucky position to be in. There aren't that many businesses that create win-win-wins, and we're able to furnish that with our flash business. In fact, we create demand out of thin air. So we increase the pie. We don't steal business necessarily from other players in the sector. We create extra travel because we're able to lower the price and increase accessibility.
Can you sort of go back, because I'm really fascinated about the business model, and you mentioned that win-win-win. Can you sort of just explain a little bit about the model that you're working with? Because you mentioned OTAs in there, you mentioned working with creating these flash deals. I don't know, I'm sort of naive here to think that you're reaching out to a lot of these vendors, these hotels, these service providers. in each country to work alongside. Is that correct? How do you manage the team? Because there's so many deals, so many amazing deals, and all of those deals are curated, which is also even much more valuable. And it's not just being someone like me gets given an experience based on on my needs, on my preferences and style. How do you build that out to make sure that everyone gets their own type of experience on their end?
A couple of things there. So I think the beauty of our model is we consult with hotels. We have a big team of 25, 30 people who are consulting, speaking to hotels every day and trying to structure packages that work. So every hotel, every package is different, and we might run every year. Not every year, but we'll often rerun hotel packages once a year, and we'll change it year on year because things have changed. So we'll speak to a hotel, and the beauty, there's multiple reasons why we make money for hotels. One is we move lots of inventory really quickly in volume. So we might be a hotel might get less money per room for us on what we call average daily rate basis. That's one. That's probably the only negative. The positive is they're filling empty rooms. So rooms that would almost certainly be, we know almost for sure that they're going to be a zero. No one's going to be in them. So even if we gave $100 for the room, like 2, 3, 4, 5,000, whatever it is, hotels we're not competing against another seller. We're competing against an empty room, which is one really big benefit. Second benefit is we never just sell the bed in the room. We sell breakfast and dinners and day spa, all this other stuff, transfers, all this other stuff that hotels love selling because it's high margin for them. So if you're a hotel, you've got a restaurant, you've got staff, you've got food, you've got built the restaurant, whatever. Your margin's very high on that product. It's about 60, 70% margin versus room, which is a little bit lower. So if they can, because we force package in most cases, and our customers love that as well. So it really does create that win-win. Hotels can sell higher yielding product and give a discount on that to customers. Customers still get a great deal because you got to eat breakfast anyway. So it creates that real win-win. It stops customers maybe going off-site or not eating or whatnot, but gives you a great experience, and hotels can juice their yield. Third thing is our average booking window is 6 months out. So hotels love that. They're allowed to, effectively comes an early bird special in many cases. So whilst we do allow people to buy it next week, the majority of people just like to lock stuff in because it's how people travel and people buy from us and customers buy from us. So again, another win-win. Customers like buying early, get a great price, and hotels can lock in that base inventory and can yield up on other channels. So they'll increase that price on OTAs and flights into whatever else. So again, hotels benefit, our customers benefit, creates a win-win. Third thing we do for a hotel is we just create great visibility for them. We've got millions and millions of members worldwide. We send out our EDM, and suddenly that hotel brand or that hotel specifically is shown to millions of people, and that's got real value. So we act like a PR for our hotel partners. So lots of great reasons hotels actually make real money out of us, and often far more money, generally always far more money than we make. So we'll charge effectively a margin like any business, but the hotels are making a lot more than we are, and that's how we think it should be. Hotels have capital invested. We want to make our partners lots of money, which is great. We want to save our customers lots of money, and we know if we're doing that, we're just effectively creating happiness, which works really well.
You mentioned about the customer experience. You mentioned about building the team. There's a lot of components when building something like this, especially when it becomes more global and more expansive. What is your thoughts around, making sure that you continue to develop the utmost quality to the customer? I think obviously the brand is one thing, and that's sort of the top of the funnel that brings people in. But once you've got them in, has it been difficult to scale that customer experience with so many people now versus when you were smaller? Or does that actually get easier because now you have the systems, the processes in place? Because I feel like something like travel is very, very sensitive, especially when I'm going out there. You don't want to be going to a hotel that looks beautiful and then eventually rock up and then it's run down, it's dilapidated, service is bad. How do you make sure that the hotels actually do what they say they're going to do, and then you promote that and with complete transparency to the consumer?
A few points in there that are interesting. So point one is called hotel quality.
Right.
That's a really big one. We have an NPS of sort of 70 plus. So vast majority of our customers have an incredible experience. It's always going to be, because we don't control the end-to-end, we don't operate the hotels ourselves, you're always going to get the odd disappointing result. Our reviews are up there with the highest in the sector. And if you look at our product review or Trustpilot, it's at 4.3, 4.4, which is pretty high. Your bookings experience is like 1.1, 2 point, whatever it is. So we do a much better job than the marketplaces because they have no control over anything. They just sell everything and it is what it is, which is what it's fine. But no criticism of them. That's just the platform they run. We run a different platform. So people do have high expectations, and there are some very rare instances where you don't meet the hotel doesn't meet the expectations. I think the beauty of there's a couple of things there. One is there's a hotel. I won't say where it is. The hotel we found out. We actually visited the hotel, so we'd sold some packages to it. We visited it afterwards. It had gone downhill post-COVID. We actually contacted the customers and refunded them all or offered them a new hotel. Mostly booked flights. They just changed hotels to another one, which is great. So we're proactive there. But we don't always have that ability because we work with thousands of hotels. We can't check every single one every single day. So there are some that slip through. What we try and do is be as proactive as possible with our customers. So when you go on Electroscapes, we send you an SMS saying, here's our customer contact line. Please let us know any issues. We'll solve it while you're there. Don't wait till you get back because we have to pay the hotel. So the worst situation is when someone says they're hating it, doesn't tell us, gets back, then tells us. We have to pay the hotel because they've finished their stay. So that can be frustrating. But as long as someone tells us, we can speak to the GM or the head of sales or whoever it is and usually get them upgraded or fixed or whatnot. So we're in that unique position where we have the range and the pricing in many ways of sort of big online players. We have the high touch of a boutique travel agent. So we think we're the best of both worlds. You can book through Electroscapes, knowing we can jump on and act on your behalf. We have significant sway with our hotel partners. We generally move a lot of volume for our partners, and they'll do the right thing by our customers because we'll ask them for it. So it's that nice sweet spot there. But in terms of sort of point two, call it the customer service point, we invest pretty heavily. And obviously, as you get to scale, you can simply just have better customer service because we now have 24/7, 365 days a year. So there's two types of businesses. There's boutique travel agents that probably want to do that but can't because they don't have the resource. So if you book through a high-end travel agent, they're incredible, these guys, but there's only one of them. So they can't answer the phone at 3 a.m. at night because a human being can't be up 24/7, 365 days. We've got a whole team spans the globe. Most of our customer service team are based in Australia. We have some people in the US who can answer overnight. So we have and we have some in Australia who answer overnight as well. So we have full 24/7. You call 2 a.m. on Christmas Day, you'll get a response. So, which is really unusual. So we do have a really high touch customer, which is expensive, but we understand the importance of maintaining customer loyalty. Our repeat rate is super high. Only about 20% of less than 20% of sales, actually 10% of our sales comes from paid marketing. So we tend to get a lot of organic sales, a lot of repeat sales, a lot of referrals. So yes, there's a cost, but the cost is essentially as much as the marketing cost is an operational cost. So that's sort of point two. And point three is we have really evolved our product suite. So we were a flash sales business till COVID. We knew we had to become more of a marketplace. So not a full OTA. So we're never going to beat Booking.com. We're never going to beat Booking.com. They're a $100 billion business, an incredible business at that. But Booking.com can't do everything. And so what we did was create a curated marketplace during COVID. So instead of having 0 or 1 property in London, you can now type in London in our search box and you'll always see 20 or 30 great properties, heavily curated. There's 1,000 5-star hotels in London. We didn't want to show this 1,000 hotel paddocks of choice. We still heavily curate. So you know that stuff on Electroscapes has been chosen, selected, curated. So we'll do the hard work for you and you can pop in and just choose, oh, I'm staying in Soho, I'm going to book this hotel. I'm staying in Mayfair, I'll book here. I'm staying in Shoreditch, I'll book here. So we try and make sure we give a nice broad range of generally 4 to 6 stars. So you can pay $150 a night, you can pay $10,000 a night. It depends on what you want. So we want to try and curate to the point where we give great options for everyone, but not so there's so much choice that they can't decide. So we've really evolved the business over COVID. Now, almost probably 40% of our sales are what we call marketplace sales versus flash sales. So it's quite a different product. So both hotels, but the marketplace is a much lower discount, but always available. So you still get your free breakfast potentially or your nightly cocktail or whatever, or a discount. But it's not as deeply discounted as those super short-term flash sales. So it's really different things, different people. A lot of people are happy just to book I'll get a free breakfast, still better value than Booking.com, but I know it's available now and I can reserve it, versus the flash special, which are amazing, but aren't always applicable to everyone because we sort of constantly change what we have there.
So that's a good dovetail into the impact of COVID. And I would be remiss to not mention COVID, especially considering the industry that Luxury Escapes is in. So how did COVID impact you guys? And obviously, for the most part, COVID really obliterated the travel industry for a lot of people, especially the airlines, the hotels. But yeah, definitely interesting to know a bit more about how you adjusted, because what's interesting to me is the adaptation that businesses can make. And the best ones are able to adapt very quickly to exogenous factors out of their control. So obviously luxury escapes are doing amazing now, but I think that during the COVID time, there probably was a lot of stuff that you had to pivot. There was a few changes you had to make. Maybe you didn't. I'm not sure. So how did you sort of deal with the whole COVID fiasco?
Yeah, it's a really good point you make. COVID was a blessing and a curse. I think more of a blessing, or absolutely more of a blessing for us. So clearly, EBITDA wasn't great. We had to do our first capital raise. We did it towards the end of COVID because that balance sheet needed help. But generally, whilst especially the first few months was super tough, it created a huge opportunity for us. And the entire industry was zagging, and we chose to zig. So everybody was firing people left, right, and centre. We increased our staff by 50% over COVID. So it was in a way that we called the ballsy move. But we could see COVID. We were also very lucky. So lucky in one respect that we didn't have to refund everyone because our customers A, loved us, and B, had bought packages, and we weren't selling a commoditized product. So customers are happy to leave the product with us. We had some people who needed a refund for various their own reasons, which is fine, but it was probably some 10% of customers. So most customers happy to leave with the cash with us. So whilst we were losing money because obviously your sales go down, we didn't have a cash flow issue. That was sort of point one. Point two is because we had a decent Australian local domestic business, we could pivot to domestic Australia, and our US business never really stopped. In fact, our US business has grown 6x since COVID. So we were really lucky that our business model naturally would adapt. So our revenue certainly dropped, but dropped 50%, not 99% like most of our sort of other friends in the industry. So we had a lot of luck there that other travel businesses didn't have. It allowed us to be really bullish when everybody else, we were on our heels and everybody else on their toes. So that was as much luck as good management. But that's how we are a pretty sort of aggressive founder-led business. We very supportive board. So we and we weren't public, so we didn't have shareholders who were panicking. We didn't have to urgently raise capital at a discount, however got the valuation. So we had a lot of luck along the way. So I think we can ignore the luck element, but we took that luck and we rolled the dice, and we're more than double pre-COVID now. At start out, we've got 520 team members. We had 200 before. Completely changed how the business works. Got this great marketplace that's growing every day. You can buy cruises online from us now. You can buy tours online from us now. Thousands of them. Thousands of hotels, not just 50. So we have a much, much better business now, much more durable, much more resilient, much more consistent. We used to sort of be very up and down, nature of flash. We're now much more consistently profitable for almost a year now. So we've been super lucky that we're able to grow the business. We were able to raise capital in sort of late 21, early 22. Most of that capital was actually secondary, not primary. So most of it was shareholders getting liquidity at a much better valuation than pre-COVID. So in every respect, we had bizarrely a very good pandemic. We were super lucky. We don't don't ignore the fact that we had a lot of good fortune, but we worked pretty hard as well. But without that good fortune, hard work and whatever else is meaningless. So we took that luck and we made the most of it. We're able to. Interestingly, when COVID happened, I was in many ways a non-exec. So I was out of the CEO role. We had another person running the business, and during COVID, sort of 6 months later, I came back into the business, and with a really sort of new lease on executive life. It was great to have time off. It was super enjoyable. It was pre-COVID, so I could travel for months. Spent most of that year traveling with a family with 2 and 4 year old kids. So it was incredibly well timed for me personally. Got to come in, and my first focus was how do we skill up the team to become a superstar team? We had a great team. How do we make it a super great team? So we sort of half our exec team has been with us the whole time. We sort of grew by another sort of 4 or 5 incredible new execs. About to hire another one who's fantastic, who I've known for many years. So really upskill the team to an A+ team. I think one of the best teams, not just in travel, one of the best exec teams in the country. We've sort of proved that with our performance. I don't think many travel businesses have performed as well as we have over the last 3 years in terms of profitability, in terms of revenue growth, in terms of staff growth, in terms of caliber of people. So we've had a lot of luck. And as you said, like COVID was a huge disruption. Some bit like if you look at the people who we thought were the winners, the Zooms, the e-commerce businesses, all that kind of stuff, have ended up being, in a way, the losers. Or the losers sort of went back to where they were. And we really have benefited from COVID. It took a few years to recognise that, but we really have benefited. We forced a change in business that we probably would have got to eventually, but hadn't. So it forced our hand. And I love coming to work every day. have an incredible team. Most people are in the office every day. In fact, we've run out of space in Sydney. We're desperately trying to get more space because we're out of some space because we can't get people away. So, which is, I think, a great reflection on the closeness of the team and the fact that people love working on this product.
You mentioned about building that A-class team, right? And I've seen time and time again, I've been involved in a lot of meetings and get-togethers, and also just building the team on our side to figure out what does that A team look like. And not a lot of people understand that leadership is extremely important, especially as you start to build a business. And everything that comes down is sort of like this trickle-down effect. But what was sort of the reasoning behind having that a bit of epiphany where you realize, okay, in order for us to really succeed here, the team is where we need to be put all of our focus in. And that obviously ties in with culture as well. What is your approach to building a good team and building a really good culture that, as you said, people want to go to work there, people enjoy the lifestyle and the perks and, you know, doing good stuff for a company and wanting to go to work every day. What can you speak to that?
Yeah, I think in terms of the first part of the question, I think you always know you need a great team. When you bootstrap, you just can't afford it. So point one. And I think the benefit of me being out of the business for 18 months, it's much easier to look at the tin from the outside than the inside. So you can sort of see just how important good people are. I think the team, when it wasn't around, did a good job in many respects, but probably the team wasn't as good as it could have been in some places. And that was pretty easy to sort of fix. And we just realised how important it is to have great people. But then we also had probably more money and bandwidth to get great people. So it was kind of both. But yeah, we realised the epiphany came. It was a slow moving epiphany. It wasn't sort of overnight. We just realised when I came back, the first priority was just making sure the team's great. I got my former CPO back from Amazon, who moved over to Europe to run product in Amazon in Europe. So I brought him back, and he's built an incredible tech team. Tech team's grown from 30 to 130 in a couple of years. So more than 4x growth. So that's been a great result as part of that business. We've now got one of the best tech teams, not the biggest, but one of the best, if not the best tech team in the country, where people would come from Amazon, Atlassian, all these businesses and say we're better in terms of how the tech team runs, how we get stuff done, how we operate, the products we're building, we're releasing. So that's a huge, incredible reflection on Shai and his team, Shai, Joss and all the team, that they do a fantastic job. We've got an amazing team of engineers, product design that's basically unparalleled. I think it's sort of Canva-like in terms of ability, and obviously a much smaller team of 130. So that's super important and been huge for the business. In terms of culture, I don't think it's a silver bullet. I think how I like to hire, obviously need to hire smart people. That's a sort of given, but we really do hire for cultural fit and personality. Do we hire people who I want to be friends with? Scott Galloway talks about the most important thing that keeps people at work is having a friend at work. So we want to hire people we like. And ultimately, the fish rots from the head. If you hire even super smart people who are bad people who aren't nice to work with or for, that just trickles through the business and it becomes like a cancer in the business. So we certainly, I look at the LT, our entire LT people I'd happily be friends with, and I'm friends with outside work. So I think if you hire people you like and respect, that is the core ingredient, and they'll then hire people they like and respect. So it trickles down. You don't always get it right. I think you'll be quick to understand. The real hard one, obviously, is super talented team member, bad values or bad person. So you got this really good person. He or her could be an incredible contributor personally, but it's hard to work with or hard to work for, or is rude or dishonest or whatever it is. Ultimately, we know we have to move that person on because we don't want a bad cultural fit in the business because it creates more problems than it solves. And it's a really hard decision in many cases because you see someone who's got a lot of skill, but ultimately we want people who have skill but who are a great cultural fit, who are good people and who want to do the best thing for our customers.
What's next for Luxury Escapes now that you are sort of at that position where you're sort of humming along nice and smoothly, but at the same time, you want to continue to innovate, continue to grow the business? What's on the horizon for anything that you can share publicly?
We've had a couple of years of massive building in the business. We went from a flash sales business 3 years, effectively a pretty basic travel business, to a business that's completely different now. So we're much more tech-driven, tech-focused. Our biggest part of the team is tech now, I think, or tech and contact center are pretty close. So we've really transitioned from a travel deals business to a travel technology business that aims at solving customer problems. So we've built a product called Trip Planner, which allows people to plan their trips. And not just that, there's plenty of trip planners out there. You can buy everything. So you can buy your hotel, your cruise, your experience, your tour, whatever else from us, or you buy from other people and just type it in and have one record. So you have your trip in your pocket. But more importantly, you can actually dynamically improve and build a trip while you're on it. So you go to travel agent, they'll print out a PDF for you. Great, fine. We'll not only create that effectively, that dynamic PDF, it's online, it's in your app, it's on your mobile, you can pull it out any time. Not only do we create that, you can add to it while you're traveling. You can be on the way to the airport and buy airport lounge access. You can go on the way to the hotel and order room service. You can do all this stuff. You can be sitting by the pool and book a hot air balloon ride. So we're getting to the point where we're suggesting things to people. We're building out our personalization engine, which we've got a team in Israel who are building that. So we're now personalizing our communication with our customers, and that'll just get better and better. So we see Trip Planner and, more importantly, the connected trip as being a real key to our growth. Obviously, there's some great advances in AI. How do we use AI to help people plan trips? And then more importantly, how do we solve problems while they're on the trip? So we think because we've got all these products connected, no other business in the world has hotels, cruises, villas, tours, experiences, flights, all connected, all online, all bookable. Booking might have great hotels, Red Balloon's got experiences, Cruise Guru's got cruises, Tour Radar's got tours. Everybody does one thing, nobody does everything. We do everything online, and you can call our call centre 24/7, 365 days a week. We literally do tick every box for a customer. You can be on holiday, you want to book something else, call us, we'll sell it to you, we'll help you go straight into your trip plan. So we want to make travel easy from the booking process to the travelling process, and our real mission is how do we use technology to make travel better? There's a lot of people, as much as people love travel, they put up with a lot of shit in that trip. They put up with delayed flights, they put up with hotel check-in, a lot of stuff that's solvable through technology, and not even complex technology, through fairly simple technology. And we're just looking to use tech along with our incredible product suite and incredible deals, to create happiness and create memories and the best trips people have ever been on. That's why we've got an NPS of 71. That's why customers love referring us to their friends. When people go with groups of 20 and every year they book a different luxury escape because they have such an incredible experience they can't get elsewhere. So we want to keep growing that. We're almost to $1 billion in turnover now. We want to be a $10 billion plus turnover business that's global. At the moment, about 75 to 80% of our business is still Australia. We want to see that flip, so we're 25% less Australia, 75% global. US has been a great market for us, can grow a lot more. We've barely scratched the surface there. We think the US can be a multi-billion dollar business soon. UK, Germany, all incredible travel markets. Singapore, India, all great markets for us as well. New Zealand. We think we've got a great brand in Australia, but frankly, people outside Australia haven't really heard of us. We think we can take this brand and this product to the world. We want to be a great Australian business. Travel businesses inherently scale globally. Look at the great travel business, the Airbnbs, the Bookings, the Expedias, the Seatrips, the Flight Centres. They're global businesses. Our product is global. We want to sell this great product to the world. And we think we can do it. We think we've got a team in place that can take this business from a $1 billion Australian business, mostly Australian business to a $10 billion global business. We're not competing against Flighties and the Australian business. We're competing against Booking.com and Airbnb.
How do you approach expansion overseas? I think there's a lot of Australian businesses out there who are not just Australian, but anyone who just wants to expand internationally. There's friction, there's red tape, there's a lot of stuff that there's even sometimes regulatory hurdles. How do you approach the sort of the blueprint for, if you have any, to go overseas, and if there's anything that you can speak to that? Because I think obviously Australia is a small market and we all acknowledge that, and travel obviously is a global market. So there's an inefficiency there, and there's also a big delta in terms of the opportunity cost for not going overseas. So how would you approach that? How does Luxury Escapes approach that? Is it setting up an office? Is it building a team and then building that up slowly? If there's anything that you can speak to that will potentially help other companies, not just travel, but just maybe in the software, B2B, SaaS industry, or who want to sort of grow their operations, what sort of advice can you give to global expansion?
We're not the experts yet on this. We've got a plus $1 million business, a couple of international business, but that's far from what we want to get to. So we're probably not far from sort of authority on this matter. We're bringing in somebody who has a wealth of international experience, who's run software business globally. So we certainly are bringing in that talent. But at the moment, it's been like anything, a lot of test and learn. So we've constantly learned. US is going best for us. It's by far our biggest international market. And we're constantly testing and learning and evolving. And a big part of Marketplace is a much better business for international. Part of the problem with Flash is it was really hard to get like domestic US deals, for example, or domestic European deals. We have some, but it's only the bigger places and the well-known places. So we had limited product that was applicable to the US and Europe. We now have a lot more product with Marketplace. We've got thousands of products that's applicable. So our product is a lot better for those markets. And we're just continually learning. I don't think there's a silver bullet. We've got some people on the ground in these regions. We'll probably put more on the ground as we scale. But at the moment, it's largely done. Most of it's done out of Australia, but not all of it. We've got a team in Singapore, a team in the US, a team in the UK. Definitely are people globally. And we will absolutely continue to grow those teams significantly. So we're sort of excited about the prospects of international. Almost everything we're building now is global products, not for Australia. So when we're building cruises, villas, all this stuff, experiences, this is as applicable for US customers as it is for Australian customers. We built a deposit product. It's applicable for overseas as Australia. So we think about ourselves as a global business. We still have a lot of work to do in that regard. And I'm probably not the person doling out advice. Look at the Canvas, the Atlassians. Those guys have done an incredible job internationally. They have been in international businesses from the get-go. They started as international businesses. We started as an Australian business. Our brand is far, far stronger here than is elsewhere. Our ROAS is far, far stronger in Australia as a result of that. So we need to build our brand in places like the US and UK and Germany and great travel markets. It's a slow burn. We don't expect it to happen overnight. This is a 10-year process for us. We want to get there, but we know it's not going to happen straight away.
Let's switch gears a little bit into sort of just going back to a lot of the journey that you went through in not just Luxury Escapes, but all the other businesses, and just sort of understand a little bit about the tough times. And I think with building any business, there's always going to be ups and downs. Is there any hard times that you remember vividly? Were there times where you felt that this was going to go anywhere, but more importantly, how did you deal with them? I think, failure is one thing, tough times is another, but if there's obviously, it's not always a boulevard of green lights. It's definitely, a lot of ambers and reds in between. So how do you can you allude to any particular moment in your career that you came across some of these tough times and how you dealt with them?
We've been lucky. We haven't had many tough times. There's two that jump out. The first one was maybe a couple of years after we started the backpacker apartments business, and we had basically a fraudulent property manager who tried to kill the business. They were a competitor of ours. They lied to a bunch of owners, tried to kill us, and we just don't take it lying down. We fought back. We went to court, took them to court. We won in court, or in tribunal. Got a state of execution, pivoted the business to corporate model, and we were away. So that bit like COVID, that crisis created a great opportunity. We're not easily killed. We're a bit like Terminator. We'll fight back, and we absolutely fought back then. And it was for our absolutely. But for that, we wouldn't have bought those properties. Wouldn't have made the $1 million. Wouldn't have us up what became Luxury Escape. So whilst that was a hard time, probably 2-3 weeks, I'd wake up feeling like I wanted to vomit for a week. And we fought back hard, and that business still exists, unfortunately. They probably should be jailed, those guys, but they're not, because it's how society works. But ultimately, that was a great benefit for us. We fought hard, and we knew we're not easy to kill. That was one time. Another time was 2012, so a couple of years after, probably no coincidence, a couple of years after we started the deals business, we had a cash flow crunch. We bought a business. Then we bought another business, and whilst our legacy business was actually performing really well, these other businesses we bought were losing more than we expected. And then we had another business that was losing money. So we had to, as shareholders, had to put some extra cash in the business. And Mitch, one of our at the time, our only real sales guy, managed to do an incredible deal with bumped into somebody in a trade show, did a deal with him, made a couple $100,000, got us over the hump. Then we did another deal in Jan, made a couple $100,000. We survived, but we could easily have not survived. It was touch and go there. And again, you wake up for a week or two feeling sick every morning. All this sort of time you worked, so 10 years of hard work building what at the time people thought we had this incredible business. It was much smaller than we are now, but people thought we had this $50 million business, whatever it was, and that we were made, we were home, and how good are these guys? As it turned out, we almost weren't. Like in the end, we got through. Probably wasn't that close, but there's definitely a little there was a period where we thought it was, and there was a time where I was calling everyone I knew, how do we get cash in? How do we survive? Just need to survive, get through this. And we found a way. Like Jeff Goldblum says in Jurassic Park, that great line, life finds a way. I think great entrepreneurs, great founders, I'm not sure that's why it's a great founder, but we're just gritty founder. We found a way. We weren't going to die. We were going to keep pounding out till we found a solution there. There was real value in that business. And that's happened. We had a business called My Table. I think we can talk about this. This is one of the business, Jeremy and I. Our original, that restaurant booking business, we pivoted to a food delivery business. Again, lots of competition came. Menu Log was performing really well. We sold our business. Our business was basically going to die. It was less than worthless. We did have 700 restaurants signed up. So we had an asset in there, a bit like Silicon Valley Bank, had an asset in there, but within an inherently worthless business. Hezi from Catch of the Day, Hezi and Gabby had bought this business called Eat Now. They had great SEO, but had no restaurant. So we knew we had value to them. And so they bought that business for not much. We'd put $1 million in our business. I said to Hezi, we've put $1 million in here. You've got restaurants. Why don't you just give us 10% of your business that they hadn't really paid much for? Create a win-win. Managed to find a solution to that business. We would have had to shut it down. It would have cost us. We knew Hezi and Gabby and Matt would do and Nathan would do an incredible job. They did. They sold that business to Menulog. Menulog had sold for almost $1 billion. So our business that was less than worthless, was killing us, was going to cost us to shut down, was effectively sold for $20 million. So we found a solution where none looked like it existed. Again, we had a business called Bookwell, again with Matt and Hezi and the same guys. This was during COVID. It was a beauty bookings engine, a SaaS business for beauty places. COVID just destroyed that part of the business. It was a bit of a disaster. The guys did as good a job they could. We managed to sell it to the global leader. So as a result of that, we were able to survive, and we merged the business with the global leader, and I'm sure that will have some great value in day. So we never say die. There have been some businesses we've shut down because they were just too small and valueless, but where there has been an asset there and we know there's value, we'll do everything we can to find a solution to that problem. And usually there is a solution. If you try hard enough, there's almost always a solution.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, the notion of just not giving up, I suppose, and it sounds kind of trite now, but obviously having tenacity. And you mentioned waking up, right? Waking up feeling sick or waking up not feeling the greatest. Those are tough times to go through. And eventually, as you mentioned, things will work out. And it's really the amount of energy and effort that you can put into the system. And those are really tough times. And I think that segues into sort of the tough times that a lot of startups are experiencing now, whether it be, going bust or raising a lot of money, not being able to raise again, right? You mentioned in your social, there's an article you wrote about the Dom Holland story. And I want to put that into light because it's an interesting tale of a very ambitious entrepreneur trying to do and build something amazing, and then figuring out that it didn't work out in the end. What was your thoughts? Can you just give a bit of a spotlight on who Dom Holland was, what he was trying to build, and what happened?
Dom is a polarising guy. He's had a couple of businesses. He had a business in Queensland when he was really young that was effectively a tow truck marketplace. And that business, there's different versions, but his version anyway is the government didn't pay him for something. They eventually did, but didn't pay him, and he couldn't continue the business, and the business went bankrupt. He then took those learnings and created a fintech business essentially that was trying to create effectively a better checkout experience for customers. So working with businesses. And Dom had just this incredible energy and optimism. And I have a podcast, not that different to yours. It's called From Zero. And he asked to come on the show, and I interviewed him. This guy's amazing with this optimism. Little did I know that when I interviewed him, his business was basically bankrupt. He had this incredible optimism. I think there could be a point where you get maybe too optimistic, but he had that incredible Silicon Valley optimism. And sadly, that business wasn't able to survive. Didn't have much revenue, had incredibly high costs, wasn't able to raise, and died. But he was just an incredible character. I like him. I think there's some failure where people sell shares and make lots of money and shareholders lose. That's bad. I think there's other instances where the captain goes down with the ship. They try as hard as they can. This was that case. Dom didn't make any, never sold a share, never made any money, did his best. Maybe he was slightly delusional in some ways, but delusional in a sort of kind of positive way. And And sadly, obviously not for employees. Employees got jobs pretty quickly, I think. But for shareholders, they were venture capitalists. They take that risk. It's part of the business. It wasn't public company investment. It wasn't mum and dad's that lost money. I think his story is a salient one, and one that we learn from, but not necessarily a bad one. But yeah, I like him. I'm always sort of biased towards entrepreneurs who give it a crack, as long as they're not fraudulent or negligent or anything like that. I don't think he was. I think he's just a guy who did his best. His best wasn't good enough. It was a hard sector. Fintech's hard. Look at the heroes, the Afterpays, the Zips. These are worthless businesses now that people were fading them. And Nick and Ant, super smart, sold out at the right time. Smartest guys in the room for sure. But also those businesses weren't zero, pretty much, or will be. And so Dom was just unlucky, just didn't get it away, didn't get enough money. So the difference between Afterpay and Fast, I think was what it was called, was just timing and smarts. And unfortunately for Dom, he didn't quite have those smarts. But yeah, so I'll always back an entrepreneur giving it a go who does his best, and I think that was the case there.
Is there a lesson to be learned, not just from his story, from all the countless stories on, failure is part of the solution at some point? You have to go through these ups and downs, but also knowing that, these things are not foolproof, and having the tenacity and the ambition to go out and do something for yourself, even if it doesn't work out, there's still a lot to gain from that. And you mentioned, obviously, he did everything that he could. He was able to build something, but was able to take this to finality. But in that journey, I think you discover a lot about yourself. You discover a lot about who you are as a person, what your advantage, what your strengths and weaknesses are. I assume you went through that yourself. Even though you've been markedly successful with all of these ventures that you've had, I would assume that there's a lot of stuff that there's a lot of self-reflection you've done on you and who you are as a better person, and hopefully come better out of that.
Yeah, often the difference between success and failure is a bit of timing, a bit of luck. I think what you said is right there. We've had a great run. We've been lucky in many cases. Yeah, we've done some hard stuff. We've been lucky more than not. I think there's a bit of a trope that in the US failure is celebrated. I don't think that's the case. I think failure in the US is tolerated. I think in Australia we're too harsh on failure. But it depends. I think it depends on there's different types of failure. There's failure where you give it a crack and things you just have bad luck, and there's failure where you're just stupid or criminal or fraudulent. So there's two different types of failures there. I'm going to distinguish between the two. I think broadly speaking, if I look at someone, if I've got two resumes, I'm hiring a senior person. If someone started their own business and given it a good crack and whatever, it hasn't worked, that's incredible. If I see that, I'm always wanting to find someone who's done that versus someone who's worked at a bank their whole life. To me, that's uninteresting. I want to see someone who's got high risk tolerance, who's willing to create. Obviously, if they've run 5 businesses, they've all collapsed in a week. That's not great. But if you've done 2 or 3 businesses and they've lasted a couple of years and for whatever reason they haven't survived, that to me is a perfect person to hire. I've loved it. It's hard to hire those people because they're usually starting the next business. But I think US has a similar attitude. Failure is tolerated. And really, if you had a business, you've learned a lot of stuff. So I think the reason why US tolerates failure is they know that having a business doesn't mean you're guaranteed success in the next one, but you've learned a lot. So think of all the Jeff Bezos, not Bezos, this escapes me now. All the guys who had businesses before obviously, Zuck had businesses before. Lots of people had businesses before they had that final business, and they may not have worked. But and literally the example I've completely slipped my mind now. But there have been several businesses that's happened, and often just the learnings you get is crucial. So I know when we had multiple. Our apartments business was 6-year apprenticeship. And that was a great apprenticeship. And whilst that wasn't, in the end, we made some money out of it, didn't die or anything, the benefit we got from learnings far outweighed working in a bank for 6 years or a law firm or whatever it was. So going out there and giving it a crack and learning on the go, trial and error, is the best way to learn.
So that sort of finishes off with the conversation about the advice that you would give to maybe your younger self or someone who is at the cusp of trying to do something. They could be in high school, they could be in uni or college, and so look, I have this great idea, but I'm scared. Like, I don't know if this is going to work out. I don't know if I'm going to lose a lot of money. What would you say to someone like that who is at that stage where they're kind of young, really have sort of the oyster in the world is their oyster, but they just don't want to. There's a lot of resistance. How would you convince them to sort of take that next step?
I think being a founder is not for everyone. I think there's some people who should be founders, some people who shouldn't. So I wouldn't be a blanket, even though I'm a founder. I don't say every single person should be a founder. So I think that's sort of one thing. But it depends on is it a one-way or two-way door? Most things are two-way doors. Most things you can give a crack, try. Like, one issue is you don't get money back. So if you have $1 million in the bank and you've sold your house, you don't get $1 million if you lose it. So that is a bit of a one-way door. But within a business, there's ways to check how a business is going. So you generally don't. The beauty of businesses these days, you don't need to build a factory and then make a widget and hopefully you can sell that widget. You can test and learn as you go. You can start really small, do the sales yourself, use AWS, use some off-the-shelf software, whatever it is. You can start a business really inexpensively now. So the beauty, and you can test and learn. If you see you've got product market fit, then you can expand, then you can take risks, then you can raise money, spend your own money, whatever it is. The beauty of business now is you can start slow and grow from there. You don't have to go 50 years ago. You didn't have that. Even 20 years ago, you had to use expensive servers. There was no AWS, no Google, no Heroku, whatever. So there's no ability to market on Google and Facebook where you can market with $100. You couldn't do that. You had to take out a newspaper ad that cost $50,000. So it's a lot easier to start a business now. It doesn't mean every single person should start a business, but if you've got a great idea, test and learn. It's no different to what we say to people in our business. You've got a great idea, test it. Let the customers will tell you if it's a good idea or not. And if there's product market fit, then you push harder. If there's not, then you do something else.
Great advice. What is the best way for people to connect with you on social or what have you? If they want to sort of connect with you, Adam.
Probably Twitter DMs is probably Twitter or LinkedIn. I get a lot of LinkedIn DMs, so sometimes I notice, sometimes I don't. But yeah, Twitter's probably the best, or Insta, or contact our.
And you have your podcast as well, right?
Yeah, which is on temporary hiatus at the moment. We'll bring it back hopefully in the next few months. But that's been good fun. So info@fromzeropodcast.com as well. We'll get there.
Sounds good. I will put all the information in the show notes for all the listeners. Thank you so much. It was great to have this conversation with you and also learn a bit more about the journey, the business building side of things, the mindset, and everything that it takes to sort of be a great founder and entrepreneur. So thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Barry. Pleasure to be on the show and love your work.
Thank you everyone for tuning into this episode. If you like this episode, be sure to check out more by subscribing to the podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next time.